This is Real History with Melissa on the second day of July, 2026. Today I was listening to a little talk on Doric columns and the Dorians. This is Greek architecture. And who were the Dorians? Where did they come from? They were very different than the Greek civilization that they moved into. And started looking around and, what was going on at that point in history. And I learned that the Mycenaeans kind of disappeared. It was a slow decline, and a period they called the Greek Dark Ages. And there was even a loss of language for a while, a period. There was a dying away of a civilization. So that's not what I want to talk about today, so I'm not going to stay on it very long. But they had a language that we call Linear B. And Linear B was deciphered in 1952. And I don't actually know if I have anything up on that. Let's see. It says that Linear B was successfully deciphered in the 1950s. I had heard it was 1952. It's an early form of Greek, applying its phonetic values to Linear A. Now, what was Linear A? So that was part of what I was thinking about today. The Minoan culture had Linear A language, and it remains to this day undeciphered. It is not identified as being any language in any known language family, including Indo-European. So it's just, that's kind of fascinating. It's a language they don't know really anything about. It's got quite interesting hieroglyphics or symbols. So this was used by the Minoans of Crete from 1800 BC to 1450 BC. And Linear A was the primary script used in palace and religious writings of the Minoan civilization. And then it was adapted into Linear B, and that was used by the Mycenaeans, and they wrote an early form of Greek. So you can look at Linear A in Wiki. I'll put a link on there. It's very interesting to look at, but nobody has deciphered it. Therefore, there are lots of things that could possibly be uncovered about Minoan civilization, but they have not uncovered them. The mysterious disappearance of the Minoan civilization, theories and facts. The disappearance of the Minoans, one of the most prominent civilizations of Bronze Age Mediterranean, is shrouded in mystery. What happened to them? They were a rich and relatively advanced seafaring nation who primarily lived on Bronze Age Crete. They had colonies on several of the Aegean islands and even parts of the continent, such as the Anatolia. Their apparently sudden and mysterious disappearance has been the source of debate for many decades. One popular theory connects their downfall to the eruption of the volcano on Thera, also known as Santorini. This supposedly weakened the Minoans so much that the Mycenaean Greeks attacked and conquered them. But the evidence doesn't show that. It goes on. I'll post that if you're interested. It shows that the two events, them being subsequently conquered by the Mycenaeans and the eruption of this volcano, were actually quite far apart. And most historians that I have read or listened to don't really have an answer as to how this very advanced civilization just disappeared or ended abruptly, is one way of putting it. Now, why was I thinking about this today? Gosh, heaven only knows. But I think, no, actually I do know, I remember. I was I had every intention of watching a video that I found on YouTube about Freemasonic influence in the architecture of Washington, D.C. And I wanted to skip an ad, and I accidentally didn't skip the ad, but skipped over to the next video in the queue, evidently. And it was a lecture on Doric columns, or, in architecture. Now, if you will look at this together, perhaps, let's see if the Dorians, and there we go. There's the Doric order of architecture. And it tells you it's a very distinctive style of a column, and I'll give you a picture of that so you'll see that, the Doric column in architecture. In Greek historiography, the Dorians are mentioned by many authors. The chief classical authors to relate their origins are Herodotus, Thucydides, and Pausanias. The most copious authors, however, lived in Hellenistic and Roman times long after the main events. Now, the Dorians were, if you look at their pottery, I did not do that today, but it is barbaric compared to the advanced civilization that they came into. And they are described as being Spartan-like, so they're warlike group of people. But it's interesting because I just mentioned there Herodotus. I think I've read elsewhere that Herodotus described the Dorians as the way in which he wrote about them is that they were elevated. They were closer to the gods. They were godlike. He gives them such a heroic, godlike stature that they become mythical. That's how he describes their arrival onto the scene. And in a way, it kind of factors into other things that I've been thinking about. So I will hold that thought for a moment and then tell you why I was looking at videos about the Freemasonic influence in architecture in Washington, D.C. And that is because on the 4th of July, it's Independence Day in the United States. And it is also the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. So 1776 to 2026. And they've been making a big deal of it for a while. And I thought, well, I'll just do a quick little real history because I don't have a guest lined up for today, and I'll talk about that. So what I wanted to just say to you that if you are interested in this, there are actually lots and lots of videos and things that you can explore online. Now, I'm not sure that that this documentary this came out in probably about 20 years ago. I'm not sure that it is available for free viewing anywhere. But there is a documentary that I saw with Alan called Riddles in Stone, The Secret Architecture of Washington, D.C. Okay, let's see. Yes, it was 2007. Directed by Christian J. Pinto. Interesting name there. The film investigates whether the city's design reflects a Masonic pattern or a secret occult agenda, featuring interviews with both Freemason apologists and conspiracy researchers. This is very good. It has been called, conspiracy theory, baseless, etc. But it is very interesting. And so if you start to look at the layout of Washington, D.C., and your eyes are open, you are going to see this. You are going to see what I think are amazing things in the layout. Now, you will see pentagrams, and you will see squares, and you will see right-angled triangles, and there's much to fascinate you. And I haven't spent, loads of time on these kind of sensational things about the secret architecture of our nation's capital. But George Washington was a Freemason. Benjamin Franklin was a Freemason. Alan Watt has talked about this Nine Sisters Lodge that Benjamin Franklin was involved in. Freemasonry is a revolutionary brotherhood. So it makes so much sense that Benjamin Franklin was involved in the French Revolution. He was over there in the nights doing lodge business, lived for years there, and then came over to the U.S. And, so he's a back and forth kind of guy. I wonder if he was a gray man. But in the course of thinking about what I might talk to you briefly about today, I watched a very interesting, to me, little 30-minute presentation on YouTube that I stumbled onto. Because I've seen many of these kind of conspiracy, it's a pentagram, look, it's Baphomet, see, and they show the lines and everything. But I found a video put out 5 years ago in 2021 by the Valley of Minneapolis, and this is a Masonic lodge. And it was entitled The Masonic Symbolism of the Architecture of Washington, D.C. And it's a very short video. It's less than 32 minutes long, so you are welcome to watch the entire thing. They point out some things that I had not seen pointed out to me in any writing or video or expose on YouTube ever, and I just found it quite fascinating. At the beginning of the video, they were welcoming the brothers to this meeting. They were saying what they were doing, and they said, this is a non-tiled meeting, so conduct yourselves accordingly. Now you'll see there's a slide there, and they have misspelled that word. But in Freemasonry, you have a tiler. So the term tiler, T-Y-L-E-R or T-I-L-E-R, in Masonry is derived from the operative Masonry trade of a tiler. That's a craftsman who lays tiles or shingles to cover and protect a building from the elements. The word tile originates from the Latin tegula, meaning to cover, which metaphorically extends to the Masonic officer's duty to cover or safeguard the lodge's secrets and proceedings from unauthorized intrusion. The spelling Tyler, T-Y-L-E-R, is an archaic form of T-I-L-E-R, adopted by Freemasonry for its antiquity. Now, they sometimes show the Tyler standing guard, like a sergeant, guarding the door with a sword. He's protecting the sanctity of the rituals and protecting the door to the lodge from Cowans. These are uninitiated persons. So that's a tiler. So when they announced at the beginning of this YouTube video, this is a non-tiled meeting, so conduct yourselves accordingly. So what are they going to share with the general public in this educational series? But what they did share was, to me, quite fascinating. They were discussing the part that I want to talk to you about, because you can see the whole thing, was the obelisk. This is the Washington Monument. Now, in Washington, D.C., you have what they call the Mall. In Europe, this might be a promenade, but it's a completely open area. You can walk it all, and you see different monuments and buildings there. So that's the Washington Mall. And there on one end, you have the Washington Monument. That is the obelisk. And on the other end, you've got the Lincoln Memorial. And that's a more, in fact, I did not look that up, but let's take a look at the Lincoln Memorial and see what kind of columns they have, just as a The Lincoln Memorial, yeah, those look like Doric columns to me. Neither here nor there, because that was not what I wanted to talk about. Okay, so just this is an interesting on-the-fly aside here. The Lincoln Memorial features 36 fluted Doric columns that encircle the exterior, symbolizing the 36 states in the Union at the time of Abraham Lincoln's death in 1865. These columns are a defining element of the memorial's neoclassical design, reflecting the ideals of democracy and strength associated with ancient Greek architecture. So that's the Lincoln Memorial, and then between the two is that reflecting pool. Well, if you've listened to Alan for a while, you have heard him describe the obelisk as representing the male. It's a phallic symbol, and the reflecting pool is the female. But when I was listening to these Masons talk, this one man present this, I found it so interesting what he was saying, because he said he went into his thinking about it and his study on it based on the shadow that the obelisk casts. And so he said that initially plans were to be, the plans showed that this was to be laid out in a perfect right triangle. But, and they don't know why it did not happen that way is lost to history. There's some thinking that the base underneath the obelisk was not as secure as it needed to be. The ground there, it wasn't as strong as it needed to be. But in any event, it ended up being moved 1 degree south, I believe he said south, and 400 feet. But if you look at the shadows that are cast by the obelisk, by the Washington Monument, then you might have to ask the question, was that always intentional? Now, backing up just a moment, he explained to us that the Constitution was signed September 17, 1787. And Constitution Day is now September 17. But he said, on any Constitution Day at about 6:43 p.m. in the evening, you will see the sun directly overhead at the top of the obelisk, at the top of the Washington Monument. Just an interesting thing there. There was also some significance in the position of the sun in the shadow on July the 4th. But what is very interesting, and there is the suggestion in the layout of a vesica. And a vesica is it's two discs or two circles with the same radius, and they intersect each other, and you have that section in the middle, and that is the vesica. I'll try to give you a picture for that. But the vesica has always represented a vagina. So, the shadows that are cast at the winter equinox, the solstice, symbolizing the death of winter, on the 21st of December, so that's the equinox, the shadow is in the eclipse. So, symbolically, that represents sexual union. And it moves, but that at all points between December 21 and December 25, this is the effect that you get. And on December 25, there is a birth. So December 21 represents a death of winter, and December 25, a birth. Well, besides Jesus being born on the 25th of December, you also have Horus, Osiris, Attis, Dionysus, Krishna, Hercules, Zoroaster, Adonis, Hermes, Prometheus, Sol Invictus. So this is, I think that it's a video worth watching to hear this Mason explain this. He also shows you the sun chair that Washington sat in on the 17th of September, 1787. That's very interesting symbolism on that chair. when he signed the Constitution. So what I notice is that there is a lot of mockery within the alternative world and the truth world. People want to separate themselves from anything that might have the taint of conspiracy. They are geopolitical pundits now. They are the men who have studied geopolitics, and they're going to tell you what's going on and the significance of what's happening in the Middle East, and et cetera, et cetera. But anything about Freemasonry, oh, that's just so, old news. And if you read Alan's writing or listen to him, this comes up over and over again. And what I hear with him is a deep understanding of history and a desire to show you that this is a very ancient system. I want to read, I'm going to share a little bit of a letter. I didn't get permission to share the entirety of this, and so there would be some things that I think are interesting, but I'll leave them out for now, and just share the parts that aren't, that don't give away the person. They went to see a movie called Disclosure Day. He wrote, "It was exactly what I expected. It was too predictable. I wasn't even close to being drawn into the spell, which most movies do for me. So it was just a big wad of propaganda," he said. But the reason for this email, I was not ready for what surprised me, and I should have been ready for this. We are all ready for the aliens to be far superior in technology and to a large degree more advanced in their political and sociological development. After all, they come in peace and are interested in helping us into a new geopolitical posture. But I wasn't ready for an advanced spirituality, one that not only parallels elements of our spirituality, but is far more, quote, sanctified and developed than our current state of spiritual growth. So the movie, displaying an advanced spirituality in the lead character, Emily Blunt, fronts advanced stages of spirituality and love that will indeed make people reconsider their own levels of spirituality and religious experience, especially if there are real-time humans supposedly displaying these new levels of spirituality in relation to living, quote, extraterrestrial beings that have been here for a while. I won't spoil the movie by saying what those markers of higher spirituality are, but when you see them, you'll know them. All this to say, Alan and the others who have been stating that a new religion is forthcoming of a New Age brand that will look like a mix of Christianity and Hinduism is probably spot on, even if it comes directly through the aliens. What the movie is coaching its viewers to see is a mass givingness and openness to this new phenomenon. Everything you experience in the movie and hear about the subject encourages this mass wonder that will unlock a new path for us all. It makes me wonder if there is already a sequel in production about how the technological enhancements of the aliens have suggested might be useful to humanity in expanding our rise in spiritual and rational growth. I think that's interesting. Earlier today, I was looking on the bookshelf at one of Alan's books, and I'm going to name a name here because Alan has named a name before, and there's one thing I think. Some of these types of books that are on my bookshelf that were Alan's books were books that were sent to him. And I continue to get this type of book sent to me from time to time. But it will be people who are out there now And they're talking now about what's going on in the world, and they present themselves as truthers or alternative, saying who's doing this agenda, calling it out, and so forth. But there's always the twist and the spin. And the book that I saw on the shelf, and I just kind of pulled it down, and I read the back end of it. It was written by David Icke, and I believe it was entitled Children of the Matrix. On the back of the book, it described that there was an interdimensional beings, an interdimensional race that has controlled the planet for thousands of years and still does. This is not the way that Alan presented history. His deep reading and deep understanding shows a deviant priesthood down through time. He's in his Cutting Through books written about them as troglodytes. Do they have what appears to be advanced civilization, advanced technology, advanced everything? And that could even include spirituality that they bring down to the barbarians who need to know how to grow a crop or whatever from whatever catastrophe they are recovering from in that cycle. Yes. But he's describing people, men, brotherhoods, priesthoods of men. And I believe that the mockery of Freemasonry, the mockery of this is just silly conspiracy thinking, level, whatever, basis level of conspiracy thinking, that mockery goes on now out there. Oh, let's not talk about that. It's just not cool. I believe that that's part of it, just as I believe that David Icke and others like him were seeding for their time. And Icke is still on the go, but he had a heyday. These ideas. Now who are they? Now what is it? Well, there certainly are a lot of DJs who've had some mind-altering experiences and little rave parties that are all of a sudden coming out and talking about truth. There's elemental gatherings and, people talking about biofields and you can dance. And it's good because you're purifying your pineal gland. Sorry. There are threads, and there have been threads in the alternative, in the truther, for decades that are seeding different things, bringing you out to the same spot. It's just interesting. It's interesting the times we live in, but we have to be very careful because there is no such thing as an advanced spirituality. There is you and what work you are willing to do on yourself, and where does that take you? Because as Alan Watts said, you are the microcosm for the macrocosm. So they're interesting times, but I think they're dangerous times. Now, I was thinking about my pace, and I'm just going to say something that next week there will not be a real history. I'm just going to take the week off. I have mentioned that to the usual second Thursday would be Neil Foster, and I said I'm just taking the time off. And I think going forward, I will be from time to time taking a week off here or there. It's not going to be on a regular basis, but I think part of it is my own process, kind of where I am and what I'm thinking is important for me. I was reflecting on some of the work that I have done this year and how much preparation I've done for some of the real histories that I've done. And so I was just thinking about books I've read this year And it's quite a little handful where I read a book to prepare to do a real history. And then I was thinking about what I've done with Nick Hayes from Hayes Reviews. And I thought, well, just as an exercise, let's count up the books that you and Nick have read together and discussed. And lo and behold, there are 10 sci-fi books. But there are 10 sci-fi books that were spread across 15 different installments. And I did 3 extras there. I did the reading of the audio book of the Julian and Thomas Huxley's Ethics, Evolution and Ethics, and there was another standalone episode that I did, so it's quite a bit of preparation. We've covered Inverted World, A Scanner Darkly, Brave New World Revisited, Animal Farm, the 3 books from the C.S. Lewis Space Trilogy, Snow Crash, So, like I said, 10 novels and 15 episodes just there. Then I almost got all the way through the huge Dom Watterson book from Sheep Farm Traders. I read Brains and Bioethics to prepare to talk to James Giordano. The Perfect Holocaust, great book, Chris Fogarty. Callous Disregard, that was the Wakefield book in preparation for talking to Paula, the mother of child number 4, in that study. And that doesn't, that leaves aside research that I've done into permaculture or bioinformatics or any number of things in preparing for it. And so, as I say, I've been thinking deeply about my time and also where I spend that time and energy. And earlier today, I was flipping through a notebook of Alan's, and I saw, drawings. He had the pyramid and the capstone, and like drawings and lines of poetry and breaking down words and playing with numbers. And I thought, goodness, I've read, all of these books in preparation for different real histories, and I have so much more of Alan's work to uncover. So that's part of it, and part of it is just a feeling that I've had lately for months now, really, that I've become a sort of a slave to time and never having enough of it. And I received an email from a German listener a few weeks ago, maybe a month and a half ago, and she didn't want to tell me what the book was about, but she asked me if I had ever read a children's story called Momo. And I hope I get the pronunciation of the author right, but it's Michael Ende. Ende. I know I didn't do it right. My German friends, G&G, were trying to tell me. They were trying to help me there. But it looks to English speakers like Michael Ende. And the book's called Momo. And so she asked if I would be interested in receiving it. And she said that copies weren't that easy to find, but she would try to find a good English translation. And I said, yes, I would love to. Well, I received the book yesterday and another book by the same author. And they both look very interesting and good. And I read the back of the book yesterday when I got it. And I thought, boy, this is exactly what I need right now. A fable for the modern world. This is the enthralling tale of Momo, an orphan girl who has made her home in a ruined amphitheater on the outskirts of a bustling, nameless city. Momo has a unique gift. In her presence, troubles become less burdensome. Conflicts are resolved, and imaginations take flight. But Momo's world is threatened when mysterious little gray men appear, promising wealth and success to people who hurry through life now, saving time and depositing it in a time-saving bank. Realizing that all that is precious, life itself, is at risk, Momo sets out on a perilous mission to defeat the men in gray. This is truly a story for our times, an imaginative fantasy and a tale of suspense with far-reaching implications about the quality of life today. And I thought when I read that, oh my goodness, I've received this book just in time. Because I had been saying to myself, you just need to manage your time better. You need to track your time better. You need to be more efficient. In other words, oil yourself, machine. You feel yourself getting a little bit stiff and tired and sore. Just put some oil in that machine. Keep going. Hurry, hurry. So just in time, and I started to read it this afternoon. There's a little drawing of an amphitheater, and the first chapter is called The Amphitheater. Long, long ago, when people spoke languages quite different from our own, many fine, big cities already existed in the sunny lands of the world. There were towering palaces inhabited by kings and emperors. There were broad streets, narrow alleyways, and winding lanes. There were sumptuous temples filled with idols of gold and marble. There were busy markets selling wares from all over the world. And there were handsome, spacious squares where people gathered to discuss the latest news and make speeches or listen to them. Last but not least, there were theaters, or more properly, amphitheaters. An amphitheater resembled a modern circus, except that it was built entirely of stone. Seats for spectators were arranged in tiers, one above the other, like steps lining the crater of a man-made volcano. Many such buildings were circular, others semicircular, others oval. Some amphitheaters were as big as football stadiums. Others could hold no more than a few hundred people. Some were resplendent with columns and statues. Others plain and unadorned. Having no roofs, amphitheaters were open to the sky. This was why, in the more luxurious ones, spectators were shielded from the heat of the sun or from sudden downpours by gold-embroidered awnings suspended above their seats. In simple amphitheaters, mats woven of rushes or straws served the same purpose. In short, people made their amphitheaters as simple or luxurious as they could afford, just as long as they had one, for our ancestors were enthusiastic playgoers. Whenever they saw exciting or amusing incidents acted out on stage, they felt as if these make-believe happenings were more real in some mysterious way than their own humdrum lives, and they loved to feast their eyes and ears on this other kind of reality. Well, I was just excited to read this. Long, long ago, when people spoke languages quite different from our own, many fine big cities already existed in the sunny lands of the world. As Alan would say, and to close with Alan, I do like to give him the last word very often. He talks about the astronomical term for the ages, the precession, the great precession. And he said, the fact is there have been many, quote, ages, and humanity as we know it has been around for millions of years. That is why sciences, including language, have been used not to free humanity, but to enslave it. The art of illusion is complete comprehension of how the human mind digests incoming information via the five senses and, by deliberate interference, bring the subject to the desired conclusion. When the subject thinks he has come to his conclusion, then all repetition of similar incoming information is automatically put into storage, bypassing all scrutiny. Faulty conclusions are then passed from parent to child, from generation to generation. This technique of imprisoning the mind was well understood from antiquity. So I love that about the amphitheater, because it was open to the sky. No tile, no tiler. Just a place of imagination. But still, it represented a place where a show was put on by somebody else. So the ultimate freedom is the amphitheater in your own mind, I think. Well, I won't be back, as I said, next week. The week following, let's just see if I know what's happening the week following. Yes, I will be speaking with Ron in Canada, and I'm looking forward to that conversation. So, happy 4th of July if you live in America. Happy 250th anniversary birthday to the United States, this wonderful Freemasonic creation.